and welcome to the Higher Education Access Corner. I'm your host, Tiffanie Diona, and today we have a hot topic segment. So my co-host is with me here today,
Deanna Brown.
All right, and today we're going to talk about being financial aid ready, or financial aid readiness. A lot of students and families right now are preparing to go into the upcoming school year, so we really want to make sure that students and families are maximizing what their financial aid opportunities and options can look like. So starting out, Deanna and I are going to really share what's it mean to be financial aid ready and what are some of the steps that students can do to maximize their funding options that are out there. Deanna, any takes or suggestions to families? Because we know being financial aid ready is more than just having the money, having the tools to actually get you to school. It's the whole preparation to get you to get them to school, from preparing to researching schools, scholarships, and you and I were talking about that before. So
yeah. I think the first step that I would take on is actually doing a lot of research on the school. You know, making sure that it's a right fit, making sure it's the culture that you want, making sure it's the location that you want. Of course, researching their academic programs to make sure they have the programs that you're interested in. And then you also definitely want to look at the cost. I think a lot of times, sometimes people go into it and they're just looking at all those other things and they're kind of putting the cost in the back burner and thinking we'll figure it out. Mm-hmm. And then you get to that point and then you didn't figure it out. So I think that all of those different things are equally important when you're talking about college planning. You know, everything, you know, you can fall in love with the school, but in order for that school to be the right fit for you, it also has to be the right financial fit for you and your family. So I think doing a lot of research on that, and one of the tools that we have here at FEE is Education Planner, and that is a college and career planning website where you can do a lot of that research. I think it's a great tool where you can get a lot of information in one location without you having to go to a lot of different websites to get all of that, all of that information that you'll need for your planning purposes. And then, of course, we talked about scholarships. Mm-hmm. Well, I always joke around because when I was in high school, the only thing that I heard was fill out the FAFSA, which we're going to talk a lot about. And that's an important tool, but it's also important to look at all types of aid, including scholarships. I think I always thought, unless I was the top of the class or, I wasn't an athlete, that I wouldn't be eligible for a scholarship. So I didn't even research any, and that's a big mistake. Mm-hmm. And it's never too early to start looking at those things. One of the things that we always talk about in our financial aid nights are creating an academic scholarship or an academic resume, right? So taking a look and seeing what type of organizations you belong to, what type of volunteer things have you taken part of, what type of clubs have you been involved in high school, and all of those things can improve your chances of getting a scholarship. So I think when you're looking at the planning process, those are all some different things to take into consideration.
I agree, and I also would add on is to start early, mm-hmm. Because when we're talking to families, a lot of times we're talking to senior families in high school. Sometimes junior families in high school, but I encourage that exploration piece that you're talking about when you're planning and you're researching your school. Start that in your 9th grade year. That way it doesn't feel so overwhelming by the time you get to your senior year in high school. There are lots of schools to choose from, but a lot of it I think really even starts with, what do you want to do? Like, what career opportunities do you think you'd be interested in? Once they can figure out the career, then they're going to know what it takes in order to get into that particular post-secondary school. So if I say I want to be a doctor, I know I'm going to have to get some education, but what type of education? I can do that research, and then from there you can figure out what schools offer the major that I'm interested in attending, how long will I have to go to school, and then figure out the different price points and do more research and visit the schools. Like you said, you need to make sure it's a good fit. And the more they do up front, I think it gets easier and it's not as overwhelming. And they're more prepared then to tackle those specific scholarships because they know what they're looking at. They're more prepared to do the financial aid pieces, and they have more resources available to them. So right. You mentioned educationplanner.org, visiting the school's individual websites as well. A lot of times they'll have key information as well as financial aid information and where to get even post-secondary scholarship opportunities directly from the school. So I think a lot of the resources are available out there to students and families. They just don't know it.
Exactly.
And the earlier they start, the more exposure they get to those different opportunities that are there.
And I want to follow up on something you said about visiting the schools. I know that's one thing that I took advantage of in high school, and it was an eye-opening experience, right? Because you always hear about different colleges through word of mouth, but when you actually go to that school and see, how that school feels, is it something that feels at home, or is it something that feels foreign to me? Am I going to feel comfortable at this school? If you're in high school and maybe you have a class size of 30 people, some of these institutions might be larger institutions, and you might be in a classroom with 100 people. Are you going to feel comfortable with that? So I think those are all the different things that until you actually visually see it, you don't really realize it until you actually get to those schools. And, even if your family doesn't have the means to do that on your own, there's a lot of community organizations that will offer students the ability to go to tours in person. I know I went through a particular sorority when I was in school that was sponsoring college tours, different organizations like YMCA has done it, tons of different community organizations. So I would say, check in with those organizations as well if your family does not have the means to schedule something like that or have that ability for you to do that.
I agree, that's it. And I'm going to even add on even more to that, because I totally agree. It's all about that comfort level for a student. And the more comfortable you are in making sure that that's really a good fit for you, the less likely you are to transfer, the less likely you are to drop out. You'll kind of stick to the school. But if maybe you're not able to get to that school immediately, but you think you're interested in it, talk to the alumni who are there, because sometimes they can give you just their perspective. Now, you still want your own, so you want to still go and get a good feel for it. And also, since COVID, a lot of schools have virtual tours that you can do just to get a visual of the campus. So I think those are things that you can do prior to actually stepping foot. And then when you do get on campus, don't just go when it's a great big tour or college day or a high school day, because they're going to pull out all the bells and whistles for you. And it's going to be like, hey, their band is out there. All the folks are out there cheering the high school students on to make the school look really, really warm and vibrant. But then what happens when all of the bells and whistles are gone? Because it might be a different feel that is out there. And I know a student who that was the case. They went out there college day, they had all of this fun, they were in the auditorium doing all these different things. They're welcoming the students on. She chose that school. She gets there and she's like, yeah, I didn't realize we're just in the country sitting all by ourselves and there's absolutely nothing else going on. And she didn't like it, you know, so it's kind of like, go not just when the bells and whistles are there and they're welcoming you in. Even if you have an opportunity, sit in on a class. And some schools will say, hey, if you schedule a visit with us individually, if classes are going on, we'll give you an opportunity to sit in on a classroom, maybe in their particular field of study, so they can get a feel for what that student to teacher or professor ratio kind of feels like. And by all means, if you are visiting a school, talk to the financial aid department. So go into the financial aid office, ask them what type of opportunities. Yes. And my brother always said that to me before going away to school. And I've said this on the podcast before, I'm the last of 5 kids. So I was, you know, our parents didn't have a lot of money for number one to go. So by the time they got to me, of course, they're still tapped out. But my brother, who was right before me, he said, if you don't do anything else, always be kind and get to know the financial aid folks and get to know the folks in the cafeteria when you're on campus, because they'll always make sure you have something to eat. And when you know the financial aid folks and they know your needs, if they're aware of opportunities and you've let it be known, you might come to mind. And I talk to schools who still say that. They'll say, hey, you know what? I was just talking to Diona and she's interested in engineering, and here's an engineering opportunity. Let me reach out to some students, and you might be the one on the top of the list simply because you've engaged with them and you now have a good rapport with them. So I think that makes all the difference in the world for students and families. And again, we always talk about scholarship opportunities and not leaving any money on the table. So it's not just those community organizations, it's the schools that students are attending as well.
The last thing I wanted to mention too about college preparing is that, you know, one of the biggest mysteries that students come across, I would say, in this process is, what should my major be, right? Don't rush into that. That's another thing that if I had to turn a clock back, I would not have done, right? Because you feel pressured, right? Because everybody's saying, what are you majoring? What are you majoring in? I don't know yet, right? So I think once you get to college, take your time, and actually, having gone through more experience in life, I would say take a look at what you're good at and then try to build a career around that. Instead of trying to fit yourself into something that you think is the hot job or what other people want you to go into, take a look, do a deep dive. What am I good at, and what could I build a career out of based on those things? And then once you get into school, you know, talk to your academic advisors, talk about those things, and there may be careers that you never even heard of that might be a good fit for you. So don't rush into a major. A lot of times students end up changing their major 3 times, end up wasting a lot of money. And so I would also have that point for new students coming in. You know, take your time, take some electives, see what you might be interested in, and then kind of declare your major after that. Because you can take a lot of credits when you first go into school that regardless of what major you go into are going to be applicable. Your English 101, your algebra, you know, your core classes that you can take when you first get into school. And then take your time as far as actually declaring that major.
So here's where we differ.
Okay.
So I think that advice is awesome advice. However, my apprehension with totally agreeing with that is sometimes once you choose that major, it's kind of like, hey, you should have started that program your freshman year. They're aggressive. So you got 4 years to get that done, and your financial aid might not carry you for that 5th year. So I say all of the things you're saying are great, but I want the students to start the exploration process earlier. So start thinking about careers in 9th grade or even 8th grade. You're not going to necessarily know exactly what you want to do. And if you don't know by your senior year, hey, don't rush yourself into a particular field of study. Follow exactly what you said. Take your time, talk to the advisors and things like that. But there are some, let's just say, maybe you were, I used engineering before, but maybe you're an architecture major. They're going to start with core courses. You know, you got to have so many math, so many this, and if you wait to declare your major, you're going to be behind the 8 ball. So I think if you know and you can figure it out, talk to folks in the community, do like job shadowing opportunities while you're still in high school. And I think the closer you can get to figuring out, hey, this is my major, and I think one of the things that you don't want to do is if someone says, like you said, hey, I think you would be good at this. This is a hot job. This is where the money is at. It's follow the passion, follow what you're good at. Or also, if it's something that you really, really like, you might not be good at it yet, but are you willing to do what needs to get done when you get in school to get good at it? I think that could work as well. But I always tell students, don't wait forever, because depending on what your major might be, it might cost you more. And you might lose out on a couple opportunities. Maybe some scholarship opportunities were there for that nursing student that very first year. And you know what, if you didn't declare it to your 2nd year, then what happens? Yeah.
I'm not saying wait till your 2nd year, but your first semester, your first semester, you know, I would say take some different electives. Like if you have in mind, okay, I'm interested in these 3 things or whatever, you know, kind of do some exploration. Because what I see is so many students, like I said, just changing, and then they've gone a year or so into the program and then change it, and then still end up, you know, taking 5 years to get a bachelor's degree and so forth. So that's why I said,
I agree with that. And I'm going to tell you why I disagreed also. I totally agree with what you said. I was that student that you talked about, though. Like, I had a major, and then I was like, yeah, I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. And I was too far into it. And in my mind, I was like, I don't want to start all over. I don't want to disappoint everybody. I was that person that second guessed myself, and then finally was like, nope, I'm changing my major. So of course it cost me more money, took me more time, but okay, I was fine with that. But what I wish I would have done, and this was just my personal choice, was just start the process earlier, and all the other tips that you gave, still do, but do it earlier.
I agree.
So for me, that's what how it was. But I do still agree overall with the picture for what you're saying.
Right.
All right, so now are we ready? Let's actually dive into how do you actually get things going. And I think one of the biggest things, we want to dive into the FAFSA application for this 26-27 academic school year, talk about the PA state grant forms and how that process is going. So everybody knows, hopefully, everybody or our listeners, if you've been paying attention to us, listening to the podcast, there was some changes done to the old FAFSAs, you know, the rollout for the 24-25, 25-26, was a little staggered. Right now, we're in a whole new academic school year, so the 2026-27 FAFSA form is out, and it's been rolling. How do you think the rollout has been so far?
I think the department has done an awesome job. I think, first of all, they released the FAFSA earlier than expected, which was good. They made some great improvements to the form to streamline it. And I think all in all, I mean, this is probably one of the smoothest years that we've had in a long time. So I think all in all, the rollout has been great. And I know we're going to talk about some of the improvements, but one of the things that they really did this year is they improved the contributor process to make it a lot easier to get contributors on the application, whereas last year the students had to complete, you know, a lot of different identifiers that sometimes students didn't have, such as their contributor's social security number. And this year they just created a code process, which just makes it so much easier. And so I think that all in all, it's been a great rollout. And so I'm very happy from what we're hearing on the field and across the country. Frankly, so it's been good.
I agree. I was pleasantly surprised. For some reason, I don't know, I think because we've dealt with the past couple of years, I was thinking, oh, there's still going to be some glitches in there. There's going to be something delaying it. They opened it early, and I'm like, whoa, folks are doing pretty good with this. And then when we're out there doing our FAFSA completion sessions, I noticed, okay, we're just flying straight through, and a lot of the parents and students are saying, wait, that's it.
Right,
and
right.
I'm like, I love a wait, that's it when you're doing a FAFSA
like,
completion session.
Wrong? It's too easy.
It didn't ask me for this or didn't ask me for that. And so the invite process was nice and easy. And I also think that because when they're creating their studentaid.gov accounts, we didn't have that delay, where it usually takes a couple days for them to go through the full verification. With the Social Security Administration, it's an instant thing starting this year.
Yep.
So it's kind of like for that family who came in and they didn't create their studentaid.gov account early, like we were saying, hey, we suggest you do it early. If they didn't, as long as they had a Social Security number, they could plow right through. It's going to do an instant verification, and they can get through the forms. It'll pull in their information, and I thought that was really great. So that makes our FAFSA completion nights easier for the students, for the parents. I haven't had any major concerns or hiccups from anyone, unless they're just user error.
Right.
Have you heard of any? And I know you work with behind the scenes a lot more and interact with them.
The only thing that I've actually heard a little bit more of, and it actually started it actually started in 25-26 year, we saw an uptick, and now I think we're seeing more of an uptick, is when people are going to create their studentaid.gov account, some people are getting notifications that an account already exists. And in some cases, it's just someone fat-fingering, you know, information, and it's not a fraudulent activity. But in other cases, there has been additional fraud that has been detected on the FAFSA, where people have been fraudulently creating accounts in other people's name. And so that's probably the biggest thing that I've been concerned about. But other than that, as far as like FAFSA navigation, application, I haven't heard any real hiccups.
Which is good.
And just to let everyone know that's listening, if you do run into that, you know, contact the customer service at FAFSA, and they will help you navigate through that process to get that rectified if that happens to you.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that. And then for those who are listening, if you're at studentaid.gov, that's the main site that you're going to complete the FAFSA application, and there's a help center there that will have all of the information, whether you're chatting, you're calling them, has all of the details and the information that Diona is talking about on how to contact them, the Federal Student Aid Information Center, in order to report that information. So that's good to know. Any other key things from FAFSA that you would say are really great this year that you've seen?
I think the communication, just as far as industry-wise, they've done a really good job of keeping the different state leads abreast of what's happening with the FAFSA. So they have pretty consistent meetings across the, you know, with people across the country to just kind of talk about any issues that are coming up. And so I think that that's been a really good change from previous years. So I think that, you know, and then just sharing of information, you know, providing screenshots of what the form would look like ahead of time so that practitioners could have that information to help families navigate through the FAFSA. So I think a lot of the materials that we're used to getting, they got that information to us much earlier in the year. So really appreciative of that.
Yeah. And then one thing I did want to point out, because there's no secret that the federal government is shut down right now. And, you know, the studentaid.gov is a federal website. And Fortunately, FAFSA, the application process, has not been delayed, so students can still go in, they can still complete the FAFSA application. Now, that help center that I was referring to, usually there's a way where you can interact with them. They're still interacting, but we kind of caution everyone to let them know because of the lapse, and it's noted on StudentAid.gov's website that there may be some delays and the responses may not be immediate. So if there comes a time where you can't get an immediate response to a FAFSA question that you have, don't forget that there are additional resources that are out there. They still have a frequently asked questions section out there. Our team of higher education access partners are still there. We're still assisting. You can reach out to us, as well as the post-secondary schools, financial aid offices. They're also aware of what's going on, and they're willing to assist. So I don't want anyone to feel like if, in fact, there comes a time where you can't get an immediate response from StudentAid.gov regarding a FAFSA question or any assistance, that there aren't tools, resources like ourselves, the schools, and even the website itself to get the answers that they need. Because the goal is to get everyone to get their FAFSA completed and all those forms that are required so that they can determine whether or not they can get some affordable options to help them cover their schools.
Absolutely. And in addition to the federal resources, we also have a student and parent resource site that can assist you, that has short videos on there. There's tip sheets regarding the FAFSA, lots of useful information. And then we also have 2 toolkits for counselors and partners. We have a financial aid toolkit, and we also have a FAFSA toolkit. So definitely take a look at our website for those additional resources as well if you're looking for things.
Absolutely. And then moving from the FAFSA, so the FAFSA is that primary application that all students want to complete. It's kind of like that first step to finding out what you may or may not receive in financial aid. For our Pennsylvania residents, we also have Pennsylvania aid as well that FIA oversees. We administer for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Specifically, the Pennsylvania State Grant Form is a big one that is out there. And so for those students, once they complete the FAFSA application, the next step for them would be to then complete the Pennsylvania State Grant Form or forms that are out there, which would be the Pennsylvania State Grant Form and then the high school form for those who plan to be enrolled for the 26-27 academic school year. And I didn't know if you want to talk about this. I think you're a little more well-versed sometimes with behind the scenes with what's going on, so I'll ask you to talk about maybe best practices for some of the students with doing it. But I can kind of get it started to say that for that student who's planning to go to school for the 26-27 academic school year, step number 1 is to automatically just go ahead and complete the FAFSA application. FIA is always going to receive the results for their students, for our Pennsylvania students who are planning to go to school. And if the student is thinking that they may not be interested in state aid, a state school, I always say still complete the state grant application regardless, because you may change your mind and at least the application is in. But in order to do that, what we tell you to do is to monitor your emails, monitor our website. You're going to get an email from FIA once all of your information has been ingested into our system, and it's going to come from noreply@grantus.fia.org. And it's going to be instructions there to help the students set up their FIA account and then complete those applications that are out there. So if a student says, hey, I haven't received anything yet, just hold tight. You will get, the information will come forward to you. Also double check to make sure it didn't go to a spam folder or anything like that. But if you've not completed your FAFSA application, you're not going to get it yet. Any best practices, because I know we've had some trouble with some of the forms, but we revamped it. We went back to Grant Us this year, and we're hopeful that things are going to be great. Any best practices for any students?
So, first of all, I would say make sure that as a student that you're monitoring the email that you put on your FAFSA, because that's the email that we're going to use to create your account for Grant Us, which is our state grant processing system. And if that's an email that is very active, I would say, when you're getting a lot of emails to that particular email box, you may even want to create a separate email just for your financial aid activities so that things don't get lost in your email box. That's just one tip that I would say, and I've actually heard that from a number of families that decided to do that. Once you get that particular email, you should receive notification if you're a first-time student and we've determined that you could be eligible to apply for the Pennsylvania State Grant. You'll get that email from the noreply@grantus.fia.org, and then you'll also receive emails to complete the state grant form and the high school form. Make sure that you are completing all the necessary documents when you go in there, And some best practices once you are in the particular form, you're going to see something that is something that is called Save as Draft. And make sure that when the instructions advise you that you should click on that you do that. And then also take your time, read the directions, read the instructions of each question before you proceed. It's not a difficult application to fill out, but you do need to take your time and make sure that you are reading the questions thoroughly, because sometimes if you answer a question incorrectly, that can cause FIA to come out with additional paperwork to you that you may not necessarily need to fill out, but because you answered a question that gave us more questions, we're going to send you additional forms to fill out. So I would say that's just some best tips. Read the directions. There are some questions where you do need to click on Save as Draft. And one of those parts in the form is when you are picking your high school that you attended. So in order for the application to show you all of the different high schools in Pennsylvania, you do have to click on Save as Draft and choose your state, and then your high school should show up on that form. We have heard from some students that they'll fill the form out and they'll say, oh, my high school isn't on here, so I'm just going to click that I can't find my high school. And then we're going to think, oh, well then you must have not gone to a high school in Pennsylvania, and then we'll go out for additional information to you when you just didn't click Save as Draft to show the menu with your high school's name listed. So those are some tips. I hope that made sense, but what I'm trying to say is take your time, pay attention, look at the instructions that it's giving you. It does give you tips throughout the form and reminders to click on that Save as Draft button. But those are some overall tips on that.
I think those are good. Yeah, I think those are really good because those are the most popular ones. Yeah. The only other thing I would add is for parents. I know parents, sometimes you want to do the forms for the students. Let the students do their own sections on their own forms. Especially when it comes to the Pennsylvania State Grant form, the student is creating the account, not the parent. And allow them to navigate through this, because sometimes parents then will start to answer the questions and they're making more mistakes than what the students would have made, or they're answering incorrectly. So we're here to assist, we're here to help, but like you said, read the form, follow the instructions to help minimize the mistakes or the errors, or for us to having the need to reach out to everyone. The goal is for the students to complete their form so that they can get everything they need to be financial aid ready. The only way you can really you can maximize that readiness, I think, is to complete the forms so that the schools, the FIA, federal government has everything that they need to see what you may or may not qualify for in aid. And then I wanted to add on, so in addition to the state grant, FIA oversees some additional special state aid programs that are out there. We encourage everybody to go to our website, fia.org, because you may in fact qualify for additional types of funding that is out there. And there may be some separate applications that will be coming soon for them. A couple I mentioned is our PA TIP program, our Grow PA, and then those who are aging out of foster care for like the Chafee or foster ed programs. The specific details everyone can get on our website, but they have applications and separate deadlines in addition to the FAFSA and or state grant application. So we don't want anyone to miss out on any opportunities that are out there for them. I think that's most of the key stuff I think that we needed. Did I forget anything, Diona, regarding state aid?
I don't think so. I would say, check out our website on fia.org. There's part of the website has other funding opportunities, and when you click on that part of the menu on our website, you're going to see a listing of various different other specialty grant programs that FIA administers. All of those different programs require that the student meet certain eligibility requirements. But take a look at those, because you may qualify for something that you weren't even aware that is in existence. So definitely take a look at that. And again, and I'll just go back to my other pet peeve about scholarships. Just apply for as many scholarships as possible. And I don't think we mentioned it in this podcast, but I know we've mentioned it before. Focusing on those local scholarships, they have a lot less competition, and your likelihood of getting a local scholarship, meaning a scholarship that's only available to students in your area, is a lot higher than a lot of the national scholarships. So just wanted to put an additional plug to.
I agree with that.
Don't forget that as well.
And small amounts add up, so don't
do.
discount it because it's only a $100 scholarship. You hear students say, it's only $100.
Yep.
I'm like, but it's $100.
That's right.
You know,
That's a book.
It adds up. Right.
That's a book.
Right. So all of those things add up. And if you need assistance, reach out. So we're here at FIA. There are 13 higher education access partners here. Our website will give you all the specific details. You all can reach out to me through the podcast, excuse me, and I'll connect you to your access partner if you need help. Don't forget to touch on with those financial aid offices that are out there. You want to do everything that you can to be fully financial aid ready. So if you're not a senior, or you're not someone who's ready to go into school, you still have more time to do the research and follow some of those tips that we were talking about. So that's it for today's episode of the Higher Education Access Corner. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.